I can just picture the writers trying to figure out how many times can we work in recognizable phrases like winter is coming and a song of fire and ice into this. House of the Dragon, episode 1. I have now seen it, and much like a lot of the stuff coming out right now, I have expressed a lot of skepticism about this. Not that I necessarily thought it was going to be automatically bad, it was mostly skepticism over whether or not I would be able to enjoy it. And the reason in this case is that even though I know intellectually, I am fully aware that this is based off the sort of the compendium histories of Westeros, i.e., stories that exist in their entirety. I mean, not in novel form, the way the Game of Thrones show was based on stuff, but like the details all exist. So we can't run into the problem of it outpacing its source material. It's not being run by the same two guys who were clearly fed up and sick of doing it and rushed everything at the last minute and completely ruined season 8 of Game of Thrones. They're not involved. So like this shouldn't still leave me with this feeling of, yeah, but even if it starts good, the last one let me down so much. I shouldn't have that feeling, but I still do. I can't help it. I know that shouldn't be there. And so like the trailers never got me interested, never got me excited. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Honestly, it's kind of the same way I reacted to a lot of the trailers for the new Lord of the Rings series that's coming out on Amazon. It just fails to stir much interest in me. That having been said, I liked this premiere a fair bit better than I thought I would. I'm not going to say I love it, but I got more enjoyment out of it than I expected, largely because it reminded me of some of the stuff that I liked about Game of Thrones that has been kind of obfuscated with time and also with the direction of the show as it went along. Because early on, Game of Thrones was about politics in a lot of ways, the political machinations, how the throne was run, and then by the 6th, 7th, 8th season, it became about big battles and wars and big movements of armies and the White Walkers and all this other stuff, and the minutia of how do we navigate the politics of this world tended to fade over time. It's part of why a character like Varys just got shafted by the time it was done, because he was built to work in the political world, but the show had kind of dropped most of its politics by the end. This brings it back, not like fully. That's not like all it's doing or anything. It's still got dragons and gore and bloody violence and all that. And I'll kind of talk about that stuff in a little bit. But it did bring back the stuff that I'm like, oh, right. That's what I used to like about this. And that was honestly just kind of a good feeling to have. So since I brought it up, in regards to the level of violence and things like that, I'm just at a point, because like the original show started like 10 years ago, something like that, maybe even more. I can't remember what year it started. But the thing is that at that point in time, I'm not going to say that I enjoyed the heavy levels of violence, but it kind of ran neutral for me. It wasn't something that bothered me. Similarly with a lot of the exploitative and or unpleasant sexual content, it wasn't something that bothered me as much. At this point, like, I don't enjoy it. So it's a question of whether or not it drags it down for me, which wasn't really an issue for me when I was younger. And it does a little bit. I do feel this is slightly more judicious than Game of Thrones was, especially in its latter half. But again, that makes it more comparable to the first season, which doesn't completely waylay the fear that I mentioned at the very start of it, that I will start out liking this and it will let me down later. That isn't assuaged by me going, oh, right, this reminds me of what I like about season 1. Oh, right, I like season 1. Oh, right, it fell apart later. But with things, I would argue that the degree of violence shown when Daemon is, taking the city guards and just being the Gestapo, basically, is like a little more than I would have cared for, but I also understand why it's there to bring bring a point on his level of brutality and give a glimpse of what it would be like for him to rule in a way that is even more so than like him in the tournament, because him in the tournament kind of shows him like being brutal in a one-on-one combat situation. But the stuff that happens with the City Watch is it shows how brutal he would be in a leadership position. And given what's going on with the show and the fears of him becoming the new king, I do think there was a reason to show all that. Doesn't mean I enjoyed watching it, but I can go, there's a reason for that to be there. And as far as the birthing scene and the death of the queen, that, again, I didn't love it, but I also found myself thinking, I feel like if this was done in latter season of Game of Thrones, it would be a lot more exploitative and a lot grosser, and I'd just like want to shower after watching it. And I wasn't left with that feeling. It didn't make it pleasant, but also it probably shouldn't have been pleasant. I think, if anything, this show both reminded me of what I used to like about Game of Thrones, but also the aspects of Game of Thrones that were novel and unique for the time, but I'm also kind of over. Like how violent it can be, how it deals with a lot of the nastiness that a lot of fantasy stories gloss over. And at the time, I could appreciate that in Game of Thrones because Game of Thrones kind of kicked the door open in terms of doing that. I mean, like, yes, I know the books have been doing it for ages, and it's probably more common in fiction and whatnot. But like in terms of TV, certainly. But I'm now at a point where I feel like this emphasis on, we're going to make everything covered in dirt and the blood's going to go over the place and we're going to be super sexually exploitative towards the female characters because that's what a world that is analogous to medieval Europe would be like. I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of over the novelty of it. And so at this point, I'm like, okay. But again, similarly with some of the other stuff I mentioned, it's not enough to make me just tune out. And the stuff that's here with the concerns about the brother, with the fears regarding the line of succession, with how someone's personal loss, the loss of his wife and of his infant son, can't be allowed to be just an emotional mourning. It has to be dealt with politically, and it has to be dealt with politically immediately. And what that does to someone who can't be allowed to just mourn because he's king, and he has to do that. He has to be king, even if he's in mourning. And watching that kind of stuff play out, this is what I'm here for. Like the dragons, the battles, all the rest, like, it can be good, it can be bad, it can be something that makes me go, yeah, that was good, or make me go, could we get past this part? But that other stuff that I'm getting now is something that I've missed. Because Game of Thrones used to do it really, really well. And I'm not going to say this is at that level yet, because again, first episode, who knows? It's distinctly possible that this could break down and just turn into, a bloody mess fairly quickly with the setup that it's got, but I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that we can keep the council meetings, the concerns, the questions about people's loyalty, the little infighting going on between certain characters where you get a sense of the history, like, yeah, they're on the same side, but also like they don't like each other or things like that. That's what I want most. And that's what'll keep me around. And as long as it can keep giving me that in a decent quantity, I'll probably put up with a fair amount of the other stuff that either doesn't do much for me or I just kind of zone out during. Because that stuff, when it's good, it's real good, and it has the potential to be real good here. I haven't really talked about, too much of the other stuff like acting or the music, which they really don't want to let go of that old theme music. I had wondered about that. Or, the special effects and the dragons and how it looks. It looks like Game of Thrones. That's what it looks like. So I don't really have much to say there. It's visually congruous with what the show was before, and I expected it to be. The performances are solid so far. Nobody is a massive standout because there hasn't really been an acting showcase. It's still interesting to me how common it is for actors who formerly played the Doctor on Doctor Who to just latch onto villain roles David Tennant's done it several times. Christopher Eccleston's done it several times. Peter Capaldi's been a villain. Matt Smith, this is not his first time being a villain, even recently. But for some reason, it's weird. Like, I got used to the hair, but it was weird for me to hear him speaking the High Valyrian. I don't know why that was weird, but I am enjoying seeing him, and there is a sense of menace that he is bringing to the part that I'm intrigued by, and I want to see more. And the princess who just got named the heir, I'm going to be very curious about her, because at least initially the actress has a sense of strength and duty about her that I'm going to be curious where they go with that. Now, like, I know some people already know the history of Westeros. They know where stuff is going. Don't tell me. Like, don't spoil stuff. Don't be a jerk. But as long as you don't do that, what are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon is what pays the bills, allows me to do this as my living, and talk to you folks as regularly as I do. But even if you can't support me that way, like, share, subscribe, do help my channel growth. Actually, on both channels has been very flat lately. The algorithm doesn't care about me. Again, it happens sporadically and for increasingly long stretches sometimes. But, I'm sorry, I'm complaining. Don't worry about that too much either. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so just come on back next time you need a break. Time to give my thanks to my highest supporting patrons. That would include Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Theotha Boyd, Becky Sparks, Fernabi Likes the Poodle, Zach, Idolin, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Adam RDL Taylor, Shane Ross, Shaylee Gourlay, Brendan LaRose, and TT. If you want your name said while these guys try and distract me, consider looking at the rewards of my Patreon.